Welcome, Fireside Adoptees. I'm your host, Nicole Koharic, proud Fireside Adoptee and blogger behind the Adoptee and Me account. And before we dive in, a few logistics notes. I will be muting everyone to eliminate our background noise. So if you have questions for Cindy or comments, please put them in the chat and we'll have time for discussion at the end of the interview. I'm honored to introduce you to today's guest speaker, Cindy Olson McQuay. Cindy is very passionate about helping her fellow adoptees, and her passion is contagious. So I'm excited to cover with you today all of the great work that she does to support adoptees on their healing journey, from being a search angel to establishing an organization that brings adoptees together to promote healing. And today we're going to cover all of it. Welcome, Cindy.
Well, thank you for having me. I actually was kind of surprised to get an invite because I consider myself a very boring adoptee. So this should be exciting.
Great. Well, let's jump in. Let's start from the beginning. Speaking of your boring adoptee story, tell us, when were you born and when and where were you adopted?
I was born in 1962. I guess nowadays we have to put that 19 in there. I'm a baby scoop era adoptee. I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and adopted and grew up in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which is only an hour and such, north of that area.
Great. So can you help us understand kind of your upbringing and how you grew up and describe your family?
Sure. So my birth mother was 14 when she had me. So again, that baby scoop era, you can absolutely understand. She was sent away, never to talk about me again, forget me, blah, 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 that whole shameful stuff. I was adopted at 3 months. I have an older adopted brother. We're not related. And then my parents had 2 biological children. So we are all within 17 to 24 months of each other. We're very close. I grew up in the typical white picket fence environment, a stay-at-home mom, a 9-to-5 working dad, private public schools. I certainly did not grow up with what I would consider a silver spoon in my mouth, but we absolutely, didn't want for nothing, so to speak. The vacations, no, I did not get a car on my 16th birthday, but, we definitely were given everything that we wanted. But I also, the town that I grew up in, I should preface, there was 2 high schools, that's it. So there was the South side, the poor side, and the affluent side. So there was not a lot of middle class, so to speak, in my area. So that was the norm for me, that you went on Disney World vacations and 2-week summer wherever vacations. I also grew up with numerous cousins that were also adopted. My neighborhood consisted of numerous adoptees. So I grew up around adoptees left and right. Adoption was part of my upbringing. It was discussed within my family very openly. I'm trying to think, Nicole, how we delved into that it was, I always have known I was adopted. I never heard those grateful or chosen words. In fact, I believe I was always told that my mother was not old enough and able to take care of me. It was never anything negative about her. It was just a matter of fact, and that was it, period. Anything I ever asked about my adoption was answered as honestly as they could. And I can't stress enough how much adoption was an open book in my childhood. With all of us, we joked. The brother that was adopted, we would always say how we were BOGOs, buy one, get one. And that my sister was a surprise and the youngest was an accident. And I'm not trying to make it out like it was a happy thing that we were adopted, but it was a very open dialogue all the time. So much as like sitting at the dinner table, and I am the only one who eats corn on the cob around. Everybody else eats it like a typewriter. And that was, anytime we had corn, that was always a discussion of, oh, there goes Cindy, with eating the corn the way obviously somebody in her family, eats corn. If you saw all of us together, the four of us, and again, this is why I think my adoption was so, I don't want to say easier because that's the wrong word, but I can't think of a correct word at this time. So you have two biological, myself and then my brother, and the genetic differences were so obvious, and I'm not talking appearance, our mannerisms were so obviously different, and we all appreciated it and talked about it, and it was normalized among us all the time.
That's really amazing because I think what we hear more often is, it's not talked about. Sometimes it's a secret, or children aren't told. And the openness that your family had really is remarkable. How did it feel, knowing that you were adopted and kind of always knowing, that was the case?
I think it's amazingly bizarre, if you ask me, but especially being a baby scoop era kid, because those women, girls, were told. I take that back. Those parents that adopted were told very little, and most of them, at least from what I've seen in the community, their parents didn't like to talk about it. The agencies were told, tell them very little. So I have no idea. I was adopted through Children's Aid Society. So I have no idea if their social worker steered them a different way, because I don't think what my parents did or what they were told to do is the norm at all. And again, how did that make me feel? It was just normal. It was just, I'm adopted. It was no big deal. I didn't feel like I was wearing, a scarlet A or anything. And again, I think a lot of that is also from having so many other adoptees in my life.
Right,
And
that's also unusual.
yeah, theirs were also open. I could go to a friend's house down the road who was adopted, and discuss adoption right in front of their parents. It was just talked about in my upbringing and in my neighborhood.
So when we talked beforehand, we were joking around about you kind of being a rebel adoptee. We talk about kind of the good compliant adoptee and the rebel adoptee. Tell us a little bit more about that and how your personality has earned you that label.
Yeah, generally as we know and have learned, when you have more than one adoptee, you have one that is usually the rebellious and one that, like you said, is the compliant. My brother and I did switch roles, not often. So I was the rebellious, and I don't even like to use that word. I was the Spitfire, I think is the better word. I was the piss and vinegar, and my brother was the compliant one most of the time. I was always asking questions about my adoption. My brother has no desire. In fact, he's most likely still in the fog, but never had any desire. I was asking questions for as long as I can remember. And when I did, I'll jump forward for a sec. When I did finally have my records open, the amount of information that my parents actually had was so limited. So there was a lot that they couldn't forthcomingly tell me, you know, like add on to answer a question that I had. The rebellious or the Spitfire side in me was more so in the teenage years, I think, when I started throwing my adoption in their face, which to me, I was pulling out the, you know, the adoptee card, so to speak. And, you know, I said some absolutely hurtful, horrible things. My biggest thing always was the fact that and I would say this running up the stairs after I'd gotten in trouble for probably choking my sister or something, was I'd stop halfway down the stairs and turn and look at them. And I would say, why did you even adopt me? And why did you name me Cindy? I think that's just so ironic. You adopted me just to have somebody, you know, to do your chores. Why didn't you just name me Cinderella like you really wanted to do? I was always throwing that in their face during my, you know, middle school type of age. Whereas my brother he would just sit there being horrified. Oh my God, I can't believe you said that. You know, but never, ever, ever when I did things like that did I get that line thrown back at me. Wow, you should be grateful that, you know, we adopted you. I never once, ever, ever, ever heard that. It never even said like when I wasn't even around. Never, never. We were all treated exactly the same way. We all got whacked with that wooden spoon the same amount of times, you know, so I never once would sit up in my room crying, saying, you know, oh, they love them more, you know, than they love Eric and me. We were absolutely treated 100% equally.
How did your parents react to your Spitfire ways?
Well, that particular thing, they generally just ignored it, one in one ear out the other. I mean, some stuff, you know, it's not even worth with your teenage kids um having that battle. For the most part, like none of us, when I say us, I'm talking my siblings and I, um none of us had therapy, none of us needed therapy, none of us got hooked into drugs or addicted to anything. We were all good students. So my Spitfireness was more of, I had a mouth, and my mother would tell you I had a mouth, and I don't mean just a foul mouth. I mean, I voiced my opinion from like the get-go. For those of you who have never, I'm like 5'1", like 103 pounds. So I'm you know, a little bitty thing. And I've just always had, according to my mother, and, you know, from a young age, an opinion. And I have made it very clear, you know, no, you're not going to do that to me. No, you know, I don't want to do that. Um, I can think of sitting at numerous holiday dinners with extended relatives and them all talking about, you know, oh, so-and-so looks like grandpa's, you know, sister. And, you know, I would take this all in, and then I think I remember like 9 or 10 saying, would you guys stop? You know, and everybody would look at me and I'd say, you know, Eric and I aren't related to you. We don't look like anybody, and we don't want to hear how you guys look like each other. And everybody would just be like, oh my God. And then they'd stop, but I would have to remind them of those things, not often, but those little things, those things that we, genetic mirroring, we know. But back then, I didn't know what the hell it was called. It was just, I knew I didn't look like anyone.
Right.
Like the bio siblings absolutely look like my parents. I mean, yes, we could fit in with my parents because we're not, you know, TRAs or anything. But no, so I hated when I'd hear those things, and I would let them know. So that I was that type of Spitfire. I just have always spoken my mind about things.
Well, you probably have no problem setting boundaries, which some of us struggle with. And, you know, I admire that about you because I am definitely was the compliant adoptee. So it's really interesting to get to know, you know, your story and how you spoke up and really said the things that I think, you know, me and other compliant adoptees were thinking, but were afraid to say, and you just said them. And
See,
that's
and I never ever had that feeling that I hear a lot of adoptees talk about being returned. That's not to say I don't struggle with the abandonment stuff. I struggle more with that in relationships, but I don't ever recall thinking that they were going to send me back. I don't ever recall that.
so. Let's talk about your search and what what compelled you to search, and was your family supportive of it?
Well, as I said, I've always asked questions, always, wanted to know. Um, again, they had very, very little info. What they were able to tell me, other than my mother being 14, was that I was of Italian descent. Thus the hand talking. And I came from a prominent political family in Philadelphia. So any of you who are familiar with that area, I immediately said, well, that's it. I'm related to the Rizzos, who was the mayor in Philadelphia. And he had a son who would have been about my birth father's age. So I, again, all along had, growing up, had asked, wanted to know. My parents were always very supportive, always, when you're 18, we'll take you to Philly, whatever you need to do. So I'm December. So as soon as I turn 18, another adoptee friend of mine, go down to Philly, had made an appointment, meet with the little old lady who, pushes this little piece of paper across to me and reads to me, again, the limited stuff that my parents also had. And I was like, okay, cool. This is great. I'm happy as a lark. Go home, share this info with my parents. My sister was also always supportive and inquisitive when I would, come home with information. So that satisfied my adoptee curiosity for a couple of years. I now knew a little bit. They gave me hair color, eye color. My mother also was very short. So again, I'm fine for a couple of years. And I found that throughout the years, that's how I was. I would get more information and I was fine. And then I'd want more information. So after the initial, I contacted the agency again and said I wanted contact. And so they act as the intermediary. And the number they had was for my maternal grandmother, who said, absolutely not. We're not having contact. Her mother thinks of her every year on her birthday, and that's it. Okay. What am I going to do? There's nothing I can do about that.
How did this communication take place?
It was always a letter. No, this was,
okay.
I mean, come on, Nicole. I'm old. This was snail mail stuff. I don't even think AOL was a thing yet. So it was a letter, and I'd wait, run into the mailbox to get anything. And of course, like all the rest of us who've received stuff, I still have all, those initial letters, which were written, typed on, what was that real thin paper?
Onion skin?
Yes, on onion skin type of paper is what it was typed on. So I what am I going to do? The maternal grandmother's not budging. Okay, so I tried again in a couple of years. Maternal grandmother still's not budging. So then I said, all right, I'm just gonna have to wait till she dies. That I can't do anything else because she's not going to she's not even letting my birth mother know I am reaching out. She is holding the keys to the gate. So the next call I make, she's dead. Okay, so she is able to, her contact now is with my birth mother's half sister, who sends me back this 4-page names after names after names, all kinds of information, and is like ecstatic about me. Okay, so now I have her, her name, her phone number, her address. My husband and I met her. She was very, very welcoming. And we were in contact for about 6 months. And then the door closed. I have no idea why, but all contact was shut off. In the meantime, I've made contact with my uncle, her brother, and his 2 children, who've been extremely welcoming to me. My birth mother is still, I'm still a secret. I have 3 maternal half siblings, 2 paternal half siblings. And actually, I should say, right after, oh no, when my husband and I met with my half aunt, I took a DNA test with me, and she did take the DNA test, so we were able to 100% confirm that we had the right birth mother. Fast forward to DNA now, I have a first cousin paternal match who just reads my messages and ignores me. But those of you who I am friends with on Facebook, well, no, you wouldn't see this. So I am very open. I refuse to be somebody's secret. So on my cousins and my uncle's pages, I very openly, like, happy birthday, Uncle, blah, so that everybody, and so my birth mother's probably freaking out going, oh my God, people are going to put 2 and 2 together, that's, but I'm too old. She's too old. We're adults. I don't get it. It's just, I don't get it.
No one should be a secret.
No.
So you conducted your own search, and how did that experience inspire you to become a search angel?
So when my DNA results came back, I can't even remember. I want to say I had like a second cousin match. Now, remember, I had names, so I was able to separate at least the maternal. And I threw myself into this DNA science like full head on in. I was fascinated by it. The centimorgan stuff just fascinated me. This was before you could do, like, you could easily color code stuff. I had index card piles of, in common with and hooked together with those little hooks and, hanging all over the room. And, I had a big dry erase board, and I was just mapping and making these trees and connecting the dots, and I loved it. So after I was able to solve mine, out in the genealogy Facebook groups and the at-home consumer DNA test now becoming a norm, people are asking for help. I've got these results and I don't know what to do. So I would jump right in and say, hey, I'd be glad to look at them for you. And that's how it started as far as being, this search, helping people search. I love it. And I found that people, they either get it with how to map and put the puzzles together, or it's just a total don't get it type of thing. I love doing it. It's, like putting a puzzle together, which led me to, so I was doing just normal, I'd say normal. I hate using that word, but just regular, for adoptees, for NPEs, donor conceived people, doing that. Now, my latest DNA venture, searching, has been helping Amerasian kids. I'm calling them kids because they're much younger than I am, finding their American GI fathers. I hooked up with an NPE friend of mine who started doing this, and I was like, yeah, I'd really like to do that. And these are fairly easy because there are no maternal matches virtually. I mean, I think I've run across 2 because in the Philippines, they can't afford these kits. They're all donated kits for these kids. So it's all you need are, the right matches, and bam, just got to verify that the dude was in the Philippines, during whatever year. And there you are. The sad thing I found about this is most of our birth fathers knew of our existence. Most of these GI guys knew nothing of leaving a child behind. And the Filipino kids don't understand why the culture is different. They don't understand why they're being rejected. So that's a little difficult. I find when I'm doing a regular DNA search, I'm sometimes able to get these birth parents to turn around and want to at least acknowledge and speak or write a letter or something. Whereas the GI dads are like, no, I don't want anything to do with that child that's over there. So and I find my Spitfire comes out because I'm more sympathetic or empathetic with the regular DNA search people. I get a little annoyed with these GI dudes. So again, my Spitfire comes out with them.
Well, it's essentially rejection, and that's a problem.
Mhm.
So, of course, when you think about your search process and your family, what were your key takeaways? Not just in terms of information, but what did you learn about yourself?
You mean my birth family?
Yeah.
I think I don't look anything like them. The pictures I've seen, I still have zero genetic mirroring, zero. When I met my cousins and my uncle, my cousin told me after I walked in the door, she said, "Oh my God, you walk just like your mother."
Wow.
And I was like, well, I don't know if that's good or bad, but I think from what I don't know if I said this, but I think I did, that my birth mother wants no contact with me at all. She still has not dealt with her own trauma and shame. And I get that. And it is what it is. You can't make or force somebody. And I don't even want to use the word love, but to have you in their life if they don't want you. And I'm okay with that. I think initially I was sort of taken aback and sort of like, why wouldn't anybody want to be friends with me or at least talk to me? But then I think as I've gotten older, I'm like, it is what it is. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. It is what it is. So what I have learned about them, I don't even think I'd like her if I met her. I really don't. And again, I'm going from what my cousins have told me.
Mm.
And not that they've said verbatim that, hey, you're better off that you didn't grow up with her. But that's almost the gist I get. I think with her not dealing with her shame, she was, I understand, very hovering over her 3 children and would not let them out of her sight and that sort of thing, which makes sense to me. You lose a baby, you want to make sure these other 3 don't get taken away. And I would not have liked that at all. But I can't say that. It goes again to are you better off? No, it's just a different life. I might have been very happy growing up. Back to me being the Italian, the family I grew up in, my father's side is Swedish, my mother's side is German. There were very, very little traditions that we did. I just say we grew up American, very little traditional stuff. The one thing I wish I could have been a part of is the Italian dinners and traditions that my birth family apparently did and still do. I to this day, I still feel disconnected that I don't have any ethnic traditions, I'll
Mm.
call it. I certainly have traditions that I do, but I don't have any ethnic traditions. So I would have liked that.
Did it change how you saw yourself at all? Kind of your identity formation?
No, because I think growing up, as I said, there were three different identities, the wrong word, like three different scenarios going on growing up. So there was my brother, my adopted brother and his identity. There was my identity. And then there were the two siblings who very similar identities. So I think the four of us have always had our own separate identities. Because I knew I was Italian, my ghost kingdom was I was a mafia dude's cherished daughter. I dreamt that all childhood. I just knew it. My birth father, was some mafia dude, and I would have been given ponies and, up on a pedestal, and that was me. So I yearned for the Italian in me, but it wasn't as Italian. I mean, I am half Italian, but it wasn't. They certainly were not of the mafiosa type. So I would not have been growing up the way that I pictured I would love to have grown up.
Right.
But no, I think my identity, I think, has always been my identity, so to speak. And I think that's because the nurturing that my parents did with us, they didn't make us each into them, or even though back then and even now, the blank slate thing is thrown at them. I really believe my parents tried not to impose their stuff on us. We're all, as much as we are close and similar, we are just as 100% different.
So you've had a strong identity kind of all along, and you didn't really, see yourself differently after searching, which is interesting. I think that was one of my fears, right, of searching, that it would change, how I
But
saw myself.
I think a lot of that, though, has to do with a person's security, and insecurity. I think, and again, I keep going back to the strong family bond, and I can't use the word bond. That's wrong because we didn't bond. But the family dynamic that went on in my childhood, I don't think I would have allowed her to intimidate me, so to speak. Like when I met my uncle and my cousins, my cousin and I hit it off immediately. I said, "Oh my God, you and I would have gotten into so much trouble growing up together. Our personalities were so similar." So does that make sense? Like, I think my identity was always there because of my parents and what they allowed
Right.
and nurtured with us.
Think about all of the people you've helped search. What kind of themes or insights do you have about adoptees from doing this work?
Hmm. Did I answer this for you already? No, I mean, when we talked before, a theme, I think so. I think the biggest theme is closure. I think most of us want closure. We want, you just want to know your identity, your, who you are, for real, not just what was on that paperwork that was or was not given to the adoptive parents. Um, some don't want reunion, and that's okay. But I think it's just closure. We want to feel like we exist. You want acknowledgement. Not just something that was dropped from the sky, like most of us feel because we don't have birth stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Many adoptees have decided, either to search or not to, or kind of on the fence. What advice do you have for someone who's out there thinking, am I ready to search? What would you tell them to think about or to do?
Um, Actually, that's a good question, because in a lot of Zooms I'm in, not everybody has searched. Not everybody's ready to search. And my biggest, what I usually, excuse me, what I usually tell them is do the DNA. Do the DNA. You can hide your results, but you've done your DNA. At least do that much for yourself. Um, when are you ready? Some people may never be ready. I think some people whose parents are still alive are afraid to do it because they're afraid they're going to upset their parents. Um, and that makes me sad for so many adoptees, just because of the fact that I was always supported. Um, because everybody should have the right and the support to know themselves. So I guess what I do is what I said is I tell them to at least do the DNA and hide the results. And then when you are possibly ready, then you can share the results.
Is there a search story or a successful reunion that stands out to you that you've helped facilitate that really kind of drives your passion for doing this work?
Hmm. Well, I have a recent Amerasian one, which I think this isn't anything really spectacular, but it's the most recent in my memory. That the kid's father, I spoke to his aunt actually, and she was very forthcoming. Now remember, those of you who do any type of searches, you're met on the other end. Even we doing our own searches, with people thinking you're scamming them and that DNA is fake and all that stuff. This woman was so nice and helpful. But the kid's father actually had committed suicide fairly after he had come back, and she was ecstatic. Excuse me. She was ecstatic to because he never had any other kids, so she was over the moon that she had a nephew. Um, I haven't helped anybody with famous people yet, unfortunately. I haven't been able to call Mick Jagger and tell him he has a kid, or another kid. Um, I don't know. I think the memorable ones are the ones where they've waited. So, I mean, I still have open searches. Those ones that just don't have good matches. But I think the memorable ones are just, is that you?
Yes, can't
Oh,
find my birth mom.
I think the memorable ones are just the ones where the client, and I'm calling him client because I don't ever charge people for that, are patient and are appreciative of the time and hours that you put into it. Um, so no, that's just the most recent one, I think.
So in addition to being a search angel, you established an organization with a very unique name that helps adoptees in a very unique way. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. um, I was in a very large NPE group, um, because this was before like adoptee groups had really taken off on their own.
Can you define that for everyone?
Oh,
I've
I'm
seen a
sorry,
couple
NPE.
different definitions. I just
Yeah,
want to make sure everyone's following.
NPE or MPE would be not parent expected or misattributed parent expected. Um, so that would be somebody who took a DNA test just for fun and found out that their birth certificate father was not, in fact, their biological father. Also donor conceived, LDAs, that sort of thing. So I attended a meet and greet in Philadelphia and met a woman named Erin. And as luck would have it, Erin and I turned out, we are very, very distant cousins. But this meet and greet was for a dinner, and then you stayed overnight. And after the event was over, Erin and I were sitting at the hotel, and we were like, oh my God, this was just not enough time at all. Now, remember, I have been around adoptees my whole life and have been able to talk about adoption, but most of the LDAs, donor conceived NPEs, have never met another person like themselves. So it was very emotional for them, and not enough time. So Erin and I said, we've got to plan one. So we went right into planning one. And our first one we held was in 2019. And it was a Friday night. So all day Saturday, went home Sunday. And after that, we said, this is not enough time. Not enough time. So we now meet Thursday nights and end Monday mornings. And we all say it's still not enough time. But the name we chose was a word that some of you are familiar with. And if you see me throughout Facebook adoption land, I like to post my little foggy GIF under foggy comments, is we chose Hyrith, and I'll tell you how to pronounce Hyrith, hope, and healing. And it's actually pronounced Hyrith. You have to roll the R. It's a Welsh word, which means Q Nicole.
It means longing or homesickness from a place that you've never been.
Right. Which is so fitting for us adoptees. It's like our whole lives. And me even sitting here saying I'm the well-adjusted adoptee, have always had that, that hole or that missing, part of, home, however you would define home. So I mean, I sold Erin. I didn't really even have to sell her because she liked the word too. So we do those twice a year. We host them. That's all we do. We host them in a private home. We make meals together. We play games together. We cry a lot. We laugh a lot. And we bring in facilitators. So we bring in professionals because neither one of us are professionals. And they do we do group sessions, anywhere from art therapy to music therapy, inner child work, drumming, Reiki.
I saw that on your website, the drumming, the energy drummer, I think it's called. Yeah.
Yes. And so that in itself developed our tagline of togetherness heals. Because we have found that being with your tribe, your crib mates, and knowing that they get it and they support you, and we're all on different paths and journeys, is what heals us or helps us to get onto the healing path.
So powerful. I mean, that's why groups like this are so important, to connect with each other. I can, imagine the power of doing that in person through guided, sessions, and really getting to see and be around other people who've had similar experiences. It has to be really powerful.
Yeah, and I think I had told you, Nicole, I'm blown away at how many Zooms that I've been on, at how many adoptees never knew another adoptee growing up. I'm shocked when I hear that, just shocked. Because again, I take that for granted because I had that. And that saddens me that, that wasn't sought out for adoptee children to be around other adopted children.
So where can people learn more about the retreats? And I think you have one coming up, right?
Yes, next Thursday. I'll put our website in the chat.
Perfect. We have a few minutes left, so let's open it up. If you'd like to unmute yourself and ask Cindy a question or a comment, and we also have some in the chats. Thank you. Cindy just put the website in the chat as well.
Did we want to turn the recording off for the questions, or how do you want to do that?
Thank you for the reminder, Amanda. Yep, let's do that.